Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another session of Dev Meet. My name is Ayodeji, or popularly Lord Sarcastic, and I'm the host at Dev Meet. Last week we treated stimulus, making interactive web pages with stimulus, and we had Destiny or Brad talk about stimulus, and we learned tons of stuff about Dev Meet. If you check our YouTube channel, just check DevMeet on YouTube, you'd see recordings of the previous sessions that we've had so far. So far, we have two recordings there, and previous recordings are still on my private channel. I'm working on moving them to DevMeet's channel specifically, so you can see them there. Today, we'll be treating a dive into caching, and we have John Paul who'd be doing an introduction. He'll be speaking to us concerning caching, everything you need to know about caching. Um, Everything you just need to know. I'm sure he has prepared a lot for this session. Before that, I would like to, because an idea came up to me quite recently to let you guys know about new tools that would help you in your day-to-day work, to help you maybe in applications for jobs and several things to do as a developer. And with that being said, I found an amazing tool built by one of the previous speakers at DevMeet, one of those who worked on DevMeet's website, actually designer and also a front-end developer. In the person of Bolu, he built an application that collects resources on software engineering, and I'd like him to do a 3 minute presentation of that application that he has built. And once he's done, we'll dive into session for today. So, Bolu, are you ready?
Yeah, sure.
All right, please go ahead.
All right, so good evening, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, sarcastic. So, like you said, I'm Bolo Abiola. I'm a front-end developer slash designer in training, and I built a website called Kukua. So I'm going to share it with you guys right now. So let me share my screen now, and then something. Okay, so my screen should be visible for everyone. So first thing, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the website now at cocoa.weekly. So quick origins of this project. Basically, I personally have worked on a couple of websites, and every time there are some useful tools that I utilize across different projects. So I used to have a Google Keep notes and also a Google Doc for listing all the things I usually use on a day to day. So I figured why not just make it to a website, and anyone having the same issues or looking for useful resources will also find it useful. So I and Dami is either here or not. So I and Damilari Adebayo. So we both worked on the first V1 of this, and this is the V2 of Kukua. So basically, it's very simple and straightforward. It's just a platform where you can find useful resources, you can search and filter, and it's like I said, it's very straightforward. So for example, if you are looking for UI libraries related to Angular, you are looking for Angular resources in general, or you can come here and search for Angular. If there's an Angular tag available, you can just click on the Angular tag. If there's not, you can also search like normal. So if I click on Angular, you can see a couple of Angular related resources and just general resources that you can also use in all frameworks. For example, NG Bootstrap, Angular Material, and Tiger UI are Angular specific frameworks. So, and if I want something related to uh, React.js or Next.js, or just say React hooks in general, then I'll be able to see resources related to React hooks. So this is a project that's basically always being updated. As soon as I find something interesting, I add it here, and anytime I need it, I need to start a new project. I just come here and search for what I need. For example, if I want to build a design system, I can come here. Okay, I can see which resources do I have for building a design system, and I can see TSDX, how to create a design system, Storybook, and DTS CLI. And I also made it, we also made it so that if, well, two things really, if you really want to, you have found a resource and you like to suggest it for us to add it here, You can also do it for here. So if you go to the sidebar and you click on suggest resource, you can add your name, your email, and for example, let's just do add your name, email, then you describe the resource, basically a title, subtitle, the URL of the resource, and then tags you think might be relevant to use for that particular resource. And once you do that, you receive a notification. We review your resource suggestion, and if it's okay, we'll add it to the platform. So if you scroll down here, this readme here is a resource that was suggested to me by one of my friends. And if you see here, there's a little icon here. If you over on top, you see suggested by AY, which is the name he put. So the once he suggested resource, I checked it out. It was useful, and then I added it to the platform. So this way, it's not just only I that's going to be adding resources. Basically, anybody else that's interested. And also, as a side note, for each of the resource, you can click on any of the tags here also, and then it will basically show you resources based on that tag. And um one other thing that we implemented for Cocoa is basically we for state management we implemented URL state management. So so what that basically means, if you want to share this with someone, or you search for backend resources and it's okay, I want to share it with someone else and I find it useful, you can just copy the link here, and then if you open a new tab and click on enter, you see the same backend resources again. So anything you search or filter, you can just save the link and then use it other times. And also more on the sidebar, you can see resources by framework, resources by specialty if you want content related resources, or resources by programming language, JavaScript, CSS. And like I said, we are always adding more resources, so this might change next time you look at it. And if you just want to give general feedback on the platform, you don't like how something looks, or you have an idea on something you'd like to change, you can just click on feedback and you send us a message. So that's basically it. So
All right.
if
Thank you very much,
yeah,
Polo.
yeah, if
Thank
anybody
you
has any
for.
question, always available. Yeah.
All
Bye
right.
bye.
You guys can check out Cocoa in your free time. So right before we get John Paul started, I'd like you guys to. I'm going to drop a link in the chat section. Please click on it, and it's a tweet concerning the today's session. You can just click on the tweet and like it, retweet, and quote, and let others know that we're starting the session now. Also, you can copy the link for the meeting and share it to group chats or friends that you know will be interested in this session. With that said, we're going to be starting right now. John Paul, are you ready? John Paul is a backend developer, someone I really admire his insights when I have questions to ask on tech stuff. See, I'm working on something and I really need insight. John Paul is a really great software engineer, and I'm very, very confident that he's going to speak a lot about caching today. So, John Paul, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. As you have said, my name is John Paul. I'll be showing you guys my face for some time. Yeah, this is what I look like. Thank you. So I'll be sharing my screen. I'll be sharing my screen now, so we can go into our topic for today. So today we are talking about caching, and for simplicity, I just opened a Google search here to ask Google what is caching. And it says it's the process of storing copies of files in a cache or temporary storage location so that they can be accessed more quickly. And why do we store things in cache so that they will be accessed more quickly when we could just store it where it has been staying before? I would go to my next slide to show you a bit of uh, how the computer does look up things that are being stored on it. So yeah, I have a small graph. It says hierarchy of data access in computers. So the top ones are the most accessible storages. And the first one is registers. So registers are, you can say, They are places where you store variables. If you work with very low level um, programming languages, you are going to be interacting with the registers a lot more than people that use JavaScript. Um, Next level of access is the cache memory. The cache memory is also on the microprocessor. There is the L1 cache, there is the L2 cache. Then there is the read random access memory, which is also known as the main memory. Then there's the disk. The disk is your file system where you store your movies. And then there's external storage if you attach an SSD for more storage. So as you can see, the cache is the second most accessible part of computer. But in real life, what we call caching and where we store data as cache is most likely not in this cache. So in real life, that caching is just a way to store something in a more accessible memory. So this is where MongoDB, MySQL, Postgres store their data, and this is where Redis stores its data in the main memory. So we're going into that uh, as we speak. So why is caching important? Caching can help you to retain your users. There's a small table here. It says page load speed versus bounce rate. So you can see as many as your page load speed increases, the less patience your users have to even wait on your page. So bounce rate is the percentage of visitors to a particular website who navigate away from the site after viewing only one page. So they reload the first page is slow. You load the second one is almost doing like the first page. They might just leave. And that might just be an ad for you to make money. So we'll be going up to some important layers where caching happens. So caching happens in many places, but these four places are important for us to know. So caching happens on the browser, it happens on the CDN, it happens on name servers, and it also happens on the backend. So we're starting with the browser, and since this is a deep dive, we'll also be looking at some code and some we'll be editing it in real time. So the first thing I'll be talking about is e tags. So I don't know, some of you that might have inspected your network tab, you might have seen something like this entity tag. Entity tag is a hash or an ID that a backend server gives a resource. So when you ask your backend server for main.js, so something like this. So when I ask this backend server for main.js file, the server responds, these are the response headers, and it responds with the e tag of this main.js file. And if I go to my code and I change main.js, I want us to take a look at the value, what it was before. It was B, it ends in B54. So I want us to take note of this e tag. This a let's say a hash that is generated by the backend for main.js. And I want to go to my code and go to main.js, and I want to change it to hello Nigeria and save it. So when I refresh this page, this is 8B54. Something happened. This is supposed to be hello Nigeria, but as it stands, what's being shown here is hello America. So It means that caching has already happened on, oh no, not this one. I'm trying to reduce, okay. Memcache reduce the line requirements. Okay. Now let's look at the headers and see what's happening here. For this request, it was fulfilled by the memory cache of the browser, and this is still 0 bytes, 0 milliseconds. It means that the browser did not even go to. So it means that the browser already has this main.js file saved. And where was it saved? It was saved in the cache memory of the browser for 300,000 seconds. And why is that? That's because in the code here, um, where's this code? In the code here, there's a small middleware here that saves that calculates this period and adds a cache control header called max age to every request, and it tells the browser to cache it for 60 times 5,000 seconds. So that's why the browser is still having this. So, but if we do our hard reload, you can see hello Nigeria, and to come back and look at the E tag, we see that the E tag has changed. So what have we learned? We've learned that this cache control header takes priority over the E tag itself. Once this age has not expired, it's not going to look out for the E tag. I'll just go here and remove this middleware. It actually came prematurely. I'll remove this middleware and I'll do a hard reload again. And the E tag is still the same. So, but there are two other tags that come with the E tag, which is the last modified. This last modified is showing the date and time at which this main.js was modified from the backend. And there is also another one. Yeah, if I remember that one, I'll share with us. So this is what the server responded with, that this file was last modified at this time, and this is the E tag of the file. So what the browser does with E tags is it first checks this cache control. Is is this file saved? If yes or no, it's going to come and check this E tag. Has the E tag changed? If the E tag has changed, then it's going to make a fresh request, like this one now. So this one now is a fresh request to the backend. But if you notice, the status code is still not 200, but something has changed. Before, when we came here, we could see memory cache that it was stored at this cache. But at this point, what happened? The server responded with a status code of 304 not modified. That is because the E tag has not changed. I'll I'll give space for questions, but please just follow me. If I add an exclamation here and I refresh it, you can see that the exclamation comes now because the cache control is not blocking it, and it asks the server for this same main.js resource, and the server responded with a different E tag, so it proceeded to download the file afresh. But if we refresh it again, it's going to be 304 not modified, but it's not being stored in the memory cache. So I'm going to talk about the summary of entity tags. So entity tags can be weak, they can be strong. Um, most e tags you see are weak. Weak e tag starts with W slash the ID. And the e tags are used in conjunction with if non-match, if modified since, and last modified. So what are these? These are headers that were sent to the browser and to the server. You notice there's if non-match here, and the browser sends this e tag that if there's no matching e tag for this file, the server should respond with 200, or if it has been modified since this time, it should respond with 200. If these two conditions fail, the the server will respond with 200, and the results will be downloaded. Okay, I think there's a question. Let me look at it. Yes, please ask your question.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Um, my, my name is Justice. I wanted to find out if um how because in this case now I can you the e tag is being set. I wanted to find out if that is done automatically or there is a place where those tags need to be set in code, and how that would be done if you wanted to set that, as
Oh,
well as the other headers that are there. The only header that you showed that was being set was that of
cache control.
the time, the age, yes, the cache control. That was the only header you showed that was being set. So I'm thinking, what about the e tag? Is it being set manually or automatically? And what about those other headers as well? Are they being set manually as well? So how are they being set?
Okay, thank you.
Thank
So
you.
these headers, they are being sent by the last person that is delivering the request to you, that is delivering the file to you, and most times that last person is a CDN. So this is an implementation of this my small website. It's also online. It's from Render, but it's being sent through Cloudflare. Cloudflare is the CDN, and there is okay. I'll start with, you can modify most of the tags, but what gets to the user is what is being sent by the last person who gave it to the user, most times being the CDN. So I would go to my code, and in this place I can decide to set my e tag however I want to set it. Right, I can decide to do this. This will also work, but you're not supposed to manage this by yourself. I think it should be the last middleware. Okay, I'm not even using it. So yeah, it's not something you're supposed to manage by yourself. Your framework most likely manages it already, or your server, being NGX or Apache, already handles it for you. And if they don't handle it, your CDN is going to handle it for you, unless you are having to share your file directly from your IP. So anything that is a middleware before you can manipulate your e tags, your cache control headers. So I'll just go straight to the summary. I was here. So they are used in conjunction with if non-match, if modified since, last modified headers to invalidate the cache on the browser. The front-end developer cannot manipulate the e tags. It's being sent from the browser, from the back end to the browser, like I said. Also, oh, it's a duplicate. So we'll go to the next cache header, which is cache control. And this cache control is it tells the browser basically how to control the cache. And then there are some values here. There's the public, there's the private. For public, it's saying that this is a public cache, like for example, something like React production is a public cache, and the browser has the flexibility to store this file in its cache. Then there's also private. Private means that it's only for the currently logged in user. There's max age. Max age is the amount of time in seconds for which the browser should store the assets. Then there's no store, which means that you should not even store it at all. It's going to always change. So once the browser sees this, is always never going to cache it. Then there's also no cache. No cache means that um, because the browser takes this cache control before the e tags, like we saw, it does this cache control check before the e tag check. So it's saying if always check using this e tag before you cache. That's what this one is saying. And then there are some other things, some other ones here, but the most interesting one is immutable. Immutable is good for assets that might never change. So something like your um where is this? Yeah, something like this React production file that is being referenced by the URL may never change. So they can put immutable here. But rather they put a very, very large max age, which is 300, it's almost 3 million seconds. So it's going to last almost forever. So once you get it, you should never have to get it again. And yeah, so we'll move to cache invalidation on the browser. We've already talked about the e tags and the last modified headers. So if the last modified header being sent by the backend is greater than what the browser has, it's going to request for a fresh one. If the e tag has changed, it's going to request for a fresh one. If the um, yeah, if these two have changed, it's going to request for a fresh one. Then there are cache control headers. The keys on cache control headers like max age, no store, immutable, those ones also control how the browser will store these front-end assets. Then, like somebody suggested, said I should use Command Shift R, which I did. So by doing that, I cleared all the cache assets on the browser for that application. Then there's also clearing from console and from settings. And a very important one is version URLs. So there is this site by this guy doing this front end competition that someone shared on JavaScripters the other day. A very, very fast site. Everything loads almost immediately. And I decided to investigate how did they achieve this. And these were some key points. So number one, they have this immutable header, which means once you visit it and you get this front end frameworks.js file, you'll never have to do it again, probably till next year until they redeploy another version of their site. Then that's immutable and the max age. Then there's another thing. There is this URL. It has some kind of ID on it. So in the past, I worked on a Laravel application that it was using Vue, and it had one app.js. and I ran into a very interesting error. I fixed something on the front end and I deployed it. We're also being proxied through Cloudflare. So I deployed it and I was expecting something to change. I did hard reload from my browser. I did everything, forget cache, like use a fresh browser, use everything. And it did not work. And why did it not work? It was because Cloudflare gave my browser a very good max age. It was not up to this, but it was big. And also, Cloudflare did not request for a new one, a new version of this app.js from my application. So I was not the only person that had that error, and years have gone by, and front-end applications now append they now append IDs to their page names or to their files. So when you run npm run build, you get a new ID for this framework.js file. Same with every other thing here. You get a new ID. And if you host it on Vessel, Vessel will give you a very good max age because it's never going to change. If you change it, the ID will change. So it makes sense to just put it there like forever. Um, I'll go to caching on CDN. So I've already talked about CDN. CDNs, content delivery networks, they store files for you and they don't allow your browser, your server to incur ingress, bandwidth, and data costs for frequently accessed files. So if you need something like React production, will never come from unpackage. This where is unpackage again? It will never come from unpackage again. To always come from Cloudflare. So Cloudflare is in the middle of unpackage.com and your browser, and you may just ask unpackage for this file once in the whole lifetime, and it's going to return this, and it's going to tell the browser to also cache it. The browser will cache it, and everybody will be good. Nobody will be disturbing each other so many times. Then caching also happens on name servers. Name servers, they are people that store information about your domain to your internet service providers. And I have my DNS records here. Yeah, I have them here. So there's this there's this field here called time to live, and this time to live is the amount of time that the name server should cache your the values that are linked to your domain. So if you put it at 1 day, just know that whenever you're going to change anything here, you have to wait till the next day. So I've run into this type of errors before, and it was not funny. I had to I had to make changes, wait for another day, make another change, wait for another day. So these people will help you to save your information so that whenever your browser is trying to visit your URL again, it's not going to make so many trips to ask for so many things. And here I'll just wait for this is basically part one of this talk. Part two, we'll be talking about backend caching, we'll talk about Redis and some other caching strategies. Stay tuned as I'll give the floor to Lord Sarcastic for now.
All right. Thank you very much for the first part of this session, John Paul. I'd like to introduce you guys to a tool that one of the previous speakers on DevMeet built in the past 1 week. The name is Resume Ranker, ranker.io, and it's a website that uses AI to rank your resume or your CV based on a particular job application. So all you need to do is just visit resumeranker.io, click on it. You copy and paste the job description that you're applying for. You paste it in the field there, and then you upload your CV. And it uses AI to let you know whether you're a good fit for that job and things you need to update in your CV to ensure that you are you have a better chance. The truth is, many of these websites we apply to jobs on, both at Greenhouse and several applications, they put your resume through several filters, and if you don't possess some keywords or some things on your CV, you're automatically weeded out before you even get to the person that would interview you. And that's why many of us get rejection letters after usually 3 days. So I'd like you guys to check out that website and see how it works, and it'll be a really good tool for you to use. Thank you very much. We'll be going to the next part for John Paul to handle the next thing you need to know about caching. Thank you very much. John Paul, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I, so we are going to talk about the backend part of caching, and this is the first thing that comes to everybody's mind: Redis. And it's not for it's a very for a very good reason, because Redis gives you so many things. It's not just a cache. I'll help them to do an ad. It's not just a cache. It's a data store. It's a pops up application. You can use it to do stuff that Apache Kafka can do, even if it's not as good as it at that game. But there's a whole lot to do with Redis. You can also use it as your database. Like today, Redis can store data and persist it. So even if you are having to switch off your data, switch off your Redis and switch it on, you should not be afraid. There's a way to persist the data and get it back. So if you use it very well with namespaces, it can help serve you just like your MongoDB. So we're moving on to some backend cache strategies, and why is there need for backend caching? So I read a report that Facebook actually serves over 80% of what they have from the cache. And there's also this thing on Google. If I go and edit my setting, like if I edit my name here to something else, they'll tell me it may take some time for it to update. So that's what's happening there. They are serving this name from the cache, and to edit their database, they use one of these strategies that we're going to talk about um, today. So I'll start from the one that is very, very popular, called cache aside caching. And how does cache aside works? It, it goes so your application goes to your database, and sorry, it goes to your cache first of all. This is step one, and it asks your cache for the data. Let's say you have an analytics website. This is good for read operations. And I'll show you an example of something that needs caching. Let me copy this query from here. And this is actually my system database. There's no connection. It's localhost. But let's see how long it will take this query to run. So as you can see, this query is taking so much time, and it's not the fault of the backend. I think it's the fault of the database admin. Probably with better indexing, we would get to run this in a faster time. And if we go to our application, open it here. We go to this our application and try to wait, wait. Okay, 500 slash API slash slow. Let me edit this before. Let me remove this. Okay. No, wrong. API slash slow. Okay, so if we refresh this was actually my browser caching it. If we refresh this, it takes a lot of time to refresh this page. It's going to take the same time that the database used, which is 37.6 seconds. And if you have an analytics dashboard that is doing something like this, because you can see there's a join, there's another join, and then there's a group. Like we are grouping like 16s here. This is going to be slow on any database. So if we keep doing it like this, it's going to scare our users away, and our users may never return to our website because it takes them half a minute to just load their analytics page. So this is a very good use case for cache aside. What cache aside does is a the application asks the cache for this data. If the cache does not have it, we'll go to the database, execute this 37 seconds query, and then when we finish with this, we update the cache, and then we return the result. And I've written a small middleware here called cache middleware. It's just going to take the URL and it's going to save it to Redis. Once it saves it, um, it's going to take the URL and then it's going to check if that URL has been stored on Redis. If it hasn't, it's going to execute this query. If it has, it's just going to return the result. So what cache aside does for us is that it helps us to pay the overhead costs of loading this data just once, and every other time is going to be as fast as possible. And there's another strategy here which is also good for write operations. It's called write through caching. How does write through caching work? So for intensive write operations, what happens is um, the application writes this data to the cache first of all, and then it later writes it to the database. But it happens on the same request. So it doesn't happen concurrently, it happens sequentially. So when you probably update your name on Google, Google may want to go through this route, but they don't go through this. They're going to go through to the route they go through. So they don't go through this. Rather, they queue this operation that will do this too. So, but for if you have a write operation that probably has some indexes, is going to update maybe one or two databases. This is a good way to just um, abstract the whole situation from your users. You store the data in the cache and then you store it on the database. But there's a better way, which is called write behind. So write behind, the better is actually relative, and I will tell us why. So write behind, what it does is it writes to the cache, but it writes to the database also asynchronously. So how it does that is either the cache helps to write to this database, or the application runs it concurrently, either using one of these concurrency methods in applications like Node.js, like Go, like Rust. But for PHP users, they have to also do it in a very different way. Probably you queue the operation to the database first of all, then later run it from a different process. So that's right behind. It's always almost the same as write aside, just write through, just that it happens asynchronously. This operation does not block the response from coming back to the user. Then there's another way for us to load data, and it's called read through caching. So I would have really loved to demo this, but setting up this Redis gears on my system. There's actually no quick start for Mac, and I did not want to use Node Cache because it's almost like I'm writing the whole code for everything. So if you have a Linux server, you can actually install Redis gears. There was no quick start for Mac or Windows because it's actually a fairly new concept. So if you use this a module of Redis, and this module can run Python code in response to changes in data in Redis. So probably if you update your database, if you update your cache, these Redis gears can help you to update your database later. So, but for this, sorry, I'll just go back a bit. So, but for right behind, yeah, I said it's better because it's faster, but also there's a small probability that what you want from the database may not be there at that point. Probably your Redis today goes off, it switches off, and it does not restore its state. It means that there has been state lost from Redis and your database, which you don't want. You don't want to tell people, did you send money yesterday? Please send that money again. Let's update our system. It's something you don't want to do. So um, there are use cases for these two. So read through, you can perform this read operation using Redis itself or your cache, whichever cache you use. The cache would have to read from the database and then update itself, then return the response to the application. So this is another way of making your application fast. It also uses the cache aside strategy a bit by checking the cache first before checking the database. But this one, the cache is helping you to visit your database by itself. Then there is this nice one called refresh ahead caching. And I like this one because this one is also good for your analytics page. It's a bit better than this cache aside, because what it does is you don't have to pay the first overhead cost of running this for 37 seconds. So whenever you're coming to get your data, it's already on your cache. And that's the way some of these social media works. They use background tags to read from database and write to cache. So when you come, you're always coming to the cache. There's no delay of loading from 1 billion records from your database, and there's no delay of waiting for the slow operations to finish. So a good way to demo this is also the analytics. There's also YouTube and some other Google services. They use this refresh ahead, where you update something that's not updated. It has to wait for the next time the background job will run before you can get it, because the application is never going to the database. It's going to the cache directly. It's only the background service that syncs the cache and the database. I don't know if there's any question on some of these caching strategies I've talked about before we go to databases. I'll check the chat.
Yeah, hello.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the session. I don't
What
know
is
if I'm if
the
I
question?
yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so you talked about different caching strategies. So I wanted to ask, I think you talked about the one where a route is cached so that when a user makes, or maybe the application, maybe the content is making an API call to the backend, it just retrieves cached results instead of going to do large computations, DB trips, and all of that. So I wanted to ask, at what point Is it necessary? Would it be necessary for one to catch to use the caching strategy for the route? Is it for all instances, or I mean, what's the benchmark? I don't know if my question is clear.
So you're asking what are good scenarios to cache the URL.
Yes.
Okay. So it's not really a good idea to be caching URLs. It's better to cache um, like namespaces, user.profile, user.something, than to cache the whole URL. But if you are having a system where a lot of people are authorized to see a certain set of data, it's, it's a very good practice to cache that URL. Like if you are exposing, let's say you had to query some stuff from the blockchain and you're exposing that data as JSON, you don't want to keep going to the blockchain to query it. The blockchain data will never change. So just serve it directly from your cache the URL. Nothing can ever go wrong from there. I don't know if I answered your question.
Okay. So I have another question, but I will allow you continue. So I'll ask my other questions later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, you said something about caching the namespaces. So, in the case where you cache namespaces, how would you use them in your code? Is it like permissions where you are using
Okay,
user?
I'll give you a very good scenario. So if
Okay.
you have a social media application and you have to get the user's profile details, like the user's name, the user's profile picture, the some other preferences, is that's a good place to store namespace, because if they go to slash profile, it will be different for everybody. So in your code, you have to say, okay, this user dot probably this ID dot profile. You just get the whole profile. If you are loading it from 10 tables, you get it, use a cache aside pattern, you save it, and then if they refresh uh, their page 100 times, you only reach your database once. So that's the type of thing you can save with namespaces. And if you want to use Redis as your database itself, that's the way you'll be modeling your data.
Okay, so basically, using namespaces is for instances where the data that is being returned is variable on a user by user basis, right?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
That's a good conclusion. Okay, so I'll just go to the next slide. It's talking about database indexing, and the database also does something like caching, but it's a concept called indexing, and it's something every backend developer should know how to work with very well. So indexing helps you to store data that is queried so many times. Like if you have a users table and people will always be logging in, so it's always a good idea to just index the email address on the database. So what it does is internally it creates a system just like a hash map. And so it stores the email and it links the email to the list of users, like the row in which that user's details is stored. So if you are trying to select all from users where email is this, it's going to just do or like I would say an O1 query, because it's going to just get the row itself without having to scan through all the rows. And a very good way to analyze what is happening is by using explain on your query. So if you use explain today, you see how this query is being generated, how it's being processed by your database. how many keys were used, whether it was an all. This all means that it's O of n. It means that you have to search all the table. And index means that it got it from an index, it got the row from an index, which means it's if you if you have been doing programming, you know that getting something from a hash map, like hash map.get is O of O of one, somehow O of one. It's not completely O of one, but it's O of one. And while array.find is O of n. So all those things also apply to your database. So if you want this query to be better, by putting some indexes here and there, it can make your queries to load faster. But however, it comes at a cost because this data that is being indexed, the keys are stored in memory. So they store pointers to the corresponding row. And if you index, say, I was working on this table. So if you index something like this, you see, it's even taking so much time to load. If you index a table with image and UUID or something that is very, very long, what you're doing is that you're just helping your database to reach its size on time. You're helping your database to reach its memory, like its memory limits on time. If you remember, I said it stores this data on the disk, not its internal memory like Redis does. So by putting everything in the index, you are making the main memory, that's the RAM of the database, to be highly utilized. But there are good ways to index your database, and it's a good practice to explain your queries to see how they are being processed by your database. That's basically the end of this session. I have some references. A slides go. They help me with the templates. It's looking fine. I use infographics template on slides go. I got icons from flat icons and a lot of insights from one of my good friends, OpenAI, ChatGPT. Then also there's an image I got from this site, Blogging Wizard, turn your blog into a thriving business. I'll, I'll be glad to answer any other questions if there are any. And if there aren't, I'll just hand over to Ayodeji.
All right. Thank you very much, John Paul. If you have any questions, could you please raise your hand? You can click on the hand icon and we'll take your questions. Just click on the hand icon out, when you do have a question. All right. In the meantime, I would like to let you guys know that we have a YouTube channel where the recording for this meeting will be posted in about a day or two. I've posted the link there. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel and you get more information concerning our meetings and recordings. You get them there on the YouTube channel. Yeah, so we have someone who has a question. Thela, please go ahead.
Hello, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Okay, my question is not concerning the catching per se, but more of when to use. Is it possible for someone to use all of these catching practices, or is there like a particular one that is better? Because I can see that all of them are done at different levels. Like this back end one, he mentioned that DB indexing, and I always index my emails. I just didn't know that that was a part of catching. So I want to know, is it something that should you do all of them, or I don't know. The
Okay,
question, that's my question.
uh, thank you. So somebody said premature optimization is the root of all evil. Sometimes some applications do not really need caching. You can just work with your database, and the cost of hosting Redis online is actually very much. It's more expensive than your database, so it's not much because it stores everything in the RAM, and that is a lot of compute cost for any cloud provider. So if you do not really need it, there's no need to actually use it. If your database is well indexed and you have a few amount of users, most times you may not need caching. So don't optimize when you don't need optimization. Redis is expensive. It's very expensive.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for that question. We have Collins who has a question. Collins, please go ahead.
All right. Good evening. You mentioned to not um index UUID tables. I just want to be sure of that, like to
Oh,
confirm. Yeah, like
sorry.
UUID tables rather.
So I was trying to create a scenario on my system where I would index the image field together with the UUID field. So UIDs are good to index. Sorry if that came out wrongly from my mouth. In any ID that looks like it's going to be unique, it's a good practice to index it. Something you are going to be frequently searching by, it's a good practice to index. But it's not a good practice to index uh, image. It's not even a good practice to store images on your database. Uh, so yeah, that's
All right. Thank you.
okay.
All right. Thank you very much for that. Um, thank you for that question. Personally, I did learn a lot from this caching thing. I've seen that it had um, attribute header. I don't know what they use it for. I just thought it's just one of those random things all these browsers add. I don't add anything to my life. But it's good to know that these are already useful things you can use in the applications. Um, Concern the issue of indexing, it's a really good idea to not prematurely optimize your application. I remember the story, though it's not related to indexing. I mean, it's just a issue of writing bad code where someone was writing code for a login page on the back end, and rather than simply retrieve usernames and compare the password using more or less like a select where this guy literally retrieved everything from the database and ran a follow up on them just to retrieve the username and then compare the and then compare the password. Yeah, just an example of writing bad code. We have Justice that has a question. Justice, please go ahead.
Okay, I waited to this time to ask this question because it's not really it's not really a question about the session. It's more of uh, general question, a question generally. So initially, when I heard dev meet, I get why we are doing this virtually, and it's very nice that we are doing it virtually. But when I heard dev meet, I thought initially that it was going to be a physical meeting, and I know that it may not be logistically viable for us to do physical meeting as often. But I think that it would be also beneficial for us to have, even if it's once a month, we could have a physical meet, right? Where we actually meet physically at the location. I know that most of us, all of us here are developers, and we like to be indoors. Anything that is going to make us to come outside, we don't like it. But sometimes we have to go out and touch grass too. So if there is a way for us to actually meet physically, I think it would be a good idea. At least just to reconnect that social this thing connection. And this thing that I'm saying, I even find it difficult to do myself. But I'm just thinking it's a good idea stuff that we should look into.
All right, thank you very much. In the meantime, we'll consider it. For now, we are doing it virtually. If you want to meet physically, I will send you my address so you can come and sit down beside me while we handle the meeting. Yes, deals on Johnpaul. He'll pay your ticket and pay your flight ticket. No problem. But in the meantime, yeah, I'll show you it's in consideration. Don't know when that will happen, but just just hold on. Thank you very much for that suggestion. Yeah, we've come to the end of today's session. I would like to reiterate on several links that you will find beneficial. First of all, this meeting is being recorded, and that means you would find the recording later on our YouTube channel. I've posted the link to the YouTube channel for those who may have joined when we are sharing the grace. Just take a look at the link there. Secondly, if you want to follow updates on this particular event, when because after this event, I'll upload resources, the resources he used, such as the slides and several helpful links that John Paul may have prepared for you to check out, and to be posted on the event page, which is this link right here. Thirdly, I'd like you guys to know that we have a Twitter account, and it would be really, really, really nice if you would follow the Twitter account. Yes, I'm so sorry we don't follow back. You see zero follows there. Yeah, just follow the account, and I tweet regularly on upcoming events. I'll let you know when they're not, you know, when has been posted or any new thing that pops up. I'll let you know about that. Um, Thirdly, or is it fourth? Yeah, one of the numbers, sure. Um, Our website, of course, I mean, it's obvious, it's meets.sh. You can visit the website to see upcoming events and events that have passed already. You can just scroll down, you can see past events. So far, I'm updating several things across the website. I mean, lots of these things require work. Lastly, next week we'll be having our last session for the year. I'll be having, if you want to speak to us on ChatGPT, helping your workflow, having a really super workflow using ChatGPT. Lots of us have access to ChatGPT, yet we don't know what to use them for or why we should use them. If you want to be speaking to us concerned that, I'd like you guys to be there. The same time on Sunday, Dev Meet happens every Sunday on Finity, except for after next week. The next time we have a session will be next year because of the Christmas and the New Year breaks. Of course, no one wants to be on Dev Meet one day to Christmas. So that will be all. Thank you guys so much. If you want to find me on Twitter, I'll drop my link here. Um, yeah, I follow back when I remember. All right, that's Lord Sarcastic. Also, if you want to contact me concerning anything concerning DevMate, if you have my phone number, reach out to me. But if you don't have my phone number, I'm not going to drop it. Instead, I'll drop you my email address. You can just send me a mail, and I read my mails faster than I read the messages. And please don't call me. Thank you very much for showing up, John Paul. Thank you so much for this session. For those that ask questions, it's really good to learn when you ask several questions concerning several things, so we can learn more. Thank you guys for showing up. Have a nice night. Eat well, sleep well, rest well. Tomorrow is Monday. I love Mondays. Bye.